Hey, Mama, you're listening to the Resting in Motherhood podcast with your host and new motherhood BFF, Brittni Maya. I'm a certified infant sleep specialist, but more importantly, I'm a mama navigating my own motherhood journey right alongside you. So join me weekly as we discuss the real, raw, and relatable truths of motherhood. We'll touch on everything from the ugly and difficult things we think but are afraid to say out loud, to the beautiful moments that uplift us and bring us so much joy in motherhood. So go ahead, take a deep breath, embrace the chaos, and join me for heartwarming conversations that'll leave you feeling understood, inspired, and ready to tackle whatever motherhood throws your way. Hey friend, I hope you're having a great start to your week. If you are in the US, I hope that you aren't running around too crazily preparing for Thanksgiving. But I just wanted to chat today about something that I think we all need around this holiday season, which is chatting about family comments and judgment that come in about our parenting as we enter a season where we are spending more time with our family. But before we jump right in, I want to chat about how I am currently finding rest in motherhood. And I'm currently finding rest in motherhood just by slowing down. I tend to find that as the seasons change from fall to winter, I don't have as much energy. I'm a little bit more tired. And I really do believe that our bodies follow the seasons. So in fall and winter, we kind of slow down. Our bodies go a little bit dormant, obviously not fully dormant, but it's a season that really invites us to kind of slow down, turn inwards, do some reflection before we start our spring, where we then kind of blossom again and get more energy. So I'm really just slowing down and releasing myself from the hustle culture that seems to be around this time of year with getting all the gifts and hurrying and being busy, and just instead focusing on slowing down, tuning into Lila and tuning into myself and where we're at. So I hope you can find a little bit of slowness in your week or day today. But again, with the holidays approaching, I wanted to chat about something I'm sure we have all encountered in our parenthood journeys: judgment and questions from the outside about how we are parenting. This could be from family or from friends or your pediatrician, etc. And whether we are new parents or have toddlers or older kids, these questions can be really annoying and honestly quite uncomfortable. So how do we handle these judgments and questions and sometimes just straight up attacks on our parenting decisions? It'll come down to personality and comfort level with boundaries. I'm a very direct person who takes zero shit. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably know this. So how I have handled these conversations has been really direct and firm. But one thing I will say is that 4 years into motherhood, I'm really confident in the way I'm doing things. So sometimes I just let comments roll right off and don't even give them the time of day, because I know that I don't need to validate what I'm doing. So I wanted this episode to be really straightforward and easy to refer back to when you're at the dinner table on Thanksgiving or Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever holiday you're celebrating. So you might even take notes right now or just kind of refer back to it, or maybe talk about it with your partner after you listen to the episode. But before entering a family or social setting, first, I want you to get really comfortable and confident with the decisions you're making in parenthood. Maybe this is about bed sharing or contact napping or breastfeeding past 12 months or just breastfeeding in general in front of your family. Maybe it's about not forcing your toddler to give family hugs or accept kisses. Maybe it's not forcing your child to say thank you, but rather modeling thank you to them, which can feel really uncomfortable in a society that feels like we need to force our children to say things instead of model it for them. and let them see how we're doing it so that it will naturally come to them and truly come from their heart. I digress, but it could be a mixture of all of these, or it could be none. But the point is, I want you to really feel confident in what you're doing and why you're doing these things. Maybe it's not letting your baby be passed from person to person. Maybe you even write a list of why these parenting decisions are so important to you. Or maybe you have a conversation with your partner, if you have one, about your decisions and why you're making them. This will help you go into this situation feeling really good about your decisions, which will make it easier for you to hold boundaries. Maybe enter into a discussion or just shut down comments. If you've had experiences with family members in the past about comments or judgment, you might reach out before and say something like, "We are so excited to see you and be with you, but we really don't want to talk about X, Y, or Z." This would obviously be for someone who feels really comfortable holding a boundary. If it's a mother-in-law that these comments come from, maybe you have your partner do this. Again, I want it to be something that will bring you peace and not add more stress. So if the thought of doing this makes you sick to your stomach, don't do it. Once you go to the gathering, you still want to prepare for comments. This doesn't mean going to the defense right away, because sometimes people are just actually curious about what you're doing, or they don't know any better. But you can go in knowing that comments, questions, or judgment might arrive. When or if they do, you could think about doing one of the following or a mix of them. You might consider being open to a conversation. If you feel really confident discussing your decisions, you might enter into a friendly conversation and explain why you're doing something. You might say something like, "We aren't looking for advice or suggestions, but I'm happy to share with you why we are doing this." You might choose to hold boundaries. Boundaries are so important, yet many of us feel really uncomfortable with them because we weren't raised to advocate for ourselves and hold those boundaries. So this can feel really awkward, especially with our parents and family. In holding boundaries, you might say something like, "This isn't something we are open to discussing," or maybe something like, "I know you care, but this is our family and we are using our family values to guide these decisions, and we don't need any external input." Obviously, I want what you're saying to feel natural and organic to you, but the idea is that you're kindly but firmly holding a boundary about what you will and will not discuss. You might choose to omit. This is for the people who aren't comfortable with holding boundaries and they don't want to stir the pot, but they also don't want to have a discussion about it. So for omission, this might look like when someone asks, "How's the baby sleeping?" You might say something like, "Great," or "like a baby." You're not lying. You just simply are not expanding on a topic that you don't want to talk about. Similarly, if they ask, "Where's the baby sleeping?" which that question gets me every time, because it's like, why does it matter where they're sleeping? Are you going to come over at night and help me? But if they were to ask, "Where are they sleeping at night?" you might say something like, "In our room," if you're bed sharing, and not let them know that they're sleeping in your bed. You can be as vague as you need to be in order to not feel like you're going to enter into a conversation that you don't want to. You could also choose, as I often do nowadays, just to let the comments roll off. This one could be for a person who is uncomfortable holding boundaries, or it could be for a person who simply doesn't care what others think. In this option, you might hear a comment and say something like, "Thanks for the input," or just simply move on, or maybe say something like, "I'm so glad that worked for you. We're doing what works for us." Ultimately, the important part is that you don't let these comments or judgments make you feel ashamed or question the decisions that you're making. If you're a people pleaser, it can feel really uncomfortable to navigate these situations, and you might end up making a decision that isn't in line with your parenting values simply because you don't want to be judged. If this is you, this is where prep ahead of time and really allowing yourself to stand firm in your choices is going to be extremely important. Another important aspect here is doing some internal work before these gatherings. What triggers come up when your parents or siblings or other family members question your parenting decisions? Are they feelings of disappointing your family? Are they feelings of feeling doubted? Are they feelings of not feeling in control? Whatever they are, the more we can analyze those feelings, the easier it's going to be to work through them. So essentially, we're doing the internal work before we go so that we know our triggers and we can work through them instead of exploding. Because I have been known to explode at a family event when a comment gets made that I'm not happy about. But I will say the farther I get in my parenting journey, the more internal work I do as a person, as a mom, the less I explode because I know those triggers. I know how to handle them. I know how to better self-regulate myself. So that is the key, is really getting comfortable and intimate with your triggers and how to work through those. And also, I do just want to say, like, it is just annoying to be questioned on a decision you're making. And sometimes that you're just annoyed. You don't want someone to have an input. But that's a trigger right there, and you can work through that as well. If you have a partner, I think it's really important to remain a united front. This might mean having a conversation ahead of time about what comments might be made and how you're going to feel about them and how you want to respond to them. I also want to touch on the fact that I think parenting choices are so polarizing because people tend to feel that if someone is doing something different than what they're doing or did with their kids, they feel like this is a direct attack on how they parented or the parenting decisions that they made. We want to be good parents as humans, most of us at least. And so when something is done completely different than how our parents, grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, friends, whoever it may be, have done something in their parenting, their ego might take this as an insult on how they did it. This is purely an internal issue and not your responsibility. Or let me rephrase this. This is purely a them issue and not a you issue. But if we can keep this in mind, it can help us see that their reaction or opinion is probably coming from a place of hurt or fear that they did it wrong. And instead of acknowledging these feelings, they attack or question. When we know this, often just letting the comments roll off our shoulders feels a lot easier. If we do decide to enter into a conversation, you can keep this in mind by using phrases like, "We think all families should do what works for them. This is simply what works for us." Sleep training as a topic can be really polarizing and honestly bring out the worst. So make sure you enter into these conversations lightly if it is something regarding sleep. Obviously, if someone has sleep trained and we aren't choosing to sleep train and they ask why not, we want to be really careful about not shaming their decision while still validating the decision that we are making. This could be something like, "Sleep training worked for you. That's great. Based on the research we have done, sleep training is not right for our family." The tricky one with that is then they might bring up the research and then things could get heated. So you might just simply say, "Sleep training worked for you. We as a couple, if you have a partner, have discussed our parenting values and we know that sleep training is just not something that we want to do. It doesn't mean that our way is right. It doesn't mean that your way is wrong. It's just simply the path that we are choosing to take as parents." I think the more that we can take a step back and really see that oftentimes, like I've said, people feel really intimidated by the choices that we're making because they're so drastic from their choices that they made as a parent or that they're making as a parent. And they truly feel that that's an attack on them. So if we can see that, even though we know our choices are not an attack on them, it can kind of help us bring our barrier down and kind of see them through eyes of empathy and just know, hey, you did what you did. I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's the beauty of the world. We all get to do what works for us. So As we enter the holiday season, I'm wishing you and your family a very happy holiday season. I want you to know that you get to decide what works in your home, and I want you to stand firm in the decisions you're making. You're doing a great job, and you don't need anybody's approval about the decisions that you're making in your home. And really remember that. Remember that the reason you're making these parenting choices is for the good of your child. And something I'll say is, I recently had an experience, and I won't go into details, but my dad made a comment to Lila that I didn't like. It wasn't respectful. And I said something the old Brittni would have yelled about it or gotten right in his face. But I was calm. I remained calm and respectful, but I just said, I wouldn't treat you that way. And it's not okay to treat Lila that way. And Lila was watching me. It was an uncomfortable situation, right? Because I don't know if you know this, but Lila and I are currently living with my parents. So it's definitely a unique dynamic because I'm seeing a lot of triggers from my childhood come up just based off of how Lila is being treated. But this was a really profound moment for me to not only reparent myself, but to show Lila that it's okay to stand up for yourself, and also to show Lila that I stood up for her because I love her and she is respected and she is valued and she deserves to be respected and valued. So we can also see, depending on how old your child is, if something happens that you're not comfortable with, it is 110% okay to hold a loving and kind and firm boundary about what you are okay with and what you are not okay with, whether that be what you're okay talking about, what you are okay with how your child is treated. But the more that we can hold those boundaries, we're healing ourselves really, but also we're showing our children two things: that it's okay to stick up for yourself. It's okay to hold firm boundaries, even with the ones that we love. And also that our children are deserving of this respect and love. So you can also kind of help that guide you in just knowing that children are watching everything, they're listening to everything, and to see their parent stand up for them or stand up for themselves or something they believe in can be really, really empowering and just a great experience for a child. So I wish you a very happy holiday season. As I said, if you will be celebrating Thanksgiving this week, I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving. I am so thankful for the Resting in Motherhood community. I'm so thankful to be here, and I'm just wishing you a wonderful day. Let's meet up next week too. Make sure to subscribe to the Resting in Motherhood podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Want to continue this conversation? Head to the show notes for this episode at restinginmotherhood.com/podcast, or connect with me on Instagram at resting_in_motherhood.